Good morning, everybody. So glad to see beautiful faces. 2021. So thank you, Mr. President, for getting this set up for us. We are so excited about the upcoming legislative session that starts tomorrow. And we're so blessed to have board members and expertise around the table that positions us as a state organization to be prepared for this upcoming legislative session. We are very proud to have a legislative agenda on behalf of the Texas Association of African American Chambers and representing the 24 chambers, Black chambers around the state. We are very blessed to have the expertise of Mr. Jim Wyatt, who is a former elected official who has been a past chairman of this association and has stayed engaged in political matters and really, through his expertise, has helped to position TAC to be able to have a very robust legislative agenda. So we're very excited to be able to present this. Again, we appreciate past Chairman Jim Wyatt for his leadership in this effort and the entire committee who has worked for the past 6 months or so on preparing a legislative agenda. This session is going to be a little bit unpredictable. There are so many issues, as you all know, facing our state and our country, but there's so many issues also facing African American business owners. So we are hopeful through our efforts, through our relationship with the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, through our relationships with legislators around the state, through relationships that our local chambers have with their local elected officials. We are hopeful that Black business will be on the agenda and Black businesses will have legislation. Mr. Wyatt is going to share with us some of those bills that have been filed that are of special interest to us. We ask that you all help us follow these bills, that you are available to us if we need members to testify or to make calls. It's going to take a group effort to be effective in this session. With that, I will turn it over to our president and leader, Mr. Charles O'Neill. I want to thank him for his leadership that he has demonstrated over several years for the Texas Association of African American Chambers. Mr. O'Neill.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Not to be redundant, just want to say that this series, Monday Morning Momentum, and this special presentation on the upcoming legislative session and our legislative agenda uh, just underscores the role that TAC plays in supporting the 25 Black Chambers of Commerce that operate in our state. The organization, Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce, was created by those local chambers to support them in their advocacy efforts to extend their reach from their local markets to the state level of government, particularly. And so, our creating and advancing a legislative agenda in support of Black-owned businesses is reflective of the expressed interest of those local chambers of commerce, many of whom are present on this call. You'll hear from them, I'm sure, as we go through the question and answer period. As Madam Chair noted, this session this year will be different. I guess that's an understatement. But given the climate that we're operating in, both nationally and here in Texas, exacerbated by the pandemic, we have a special interest in the performance of our state legislature. We and certainly the way I approach our business is to exact a return on our taxpayer investment. We have the largest population, a Black population among the 50 states. It is not reflected in the response of our state government to Black Texans. And so everything that we do as an organization is to return economic benefit to the communities that support this government. And so we welcome you this morning. Thank you so much for your attendance and your participation in this call. Please extend the invitation from yourself to your friends and associates to watch the work that we do as an organization on behalf of Black-owned businesses. And then to our program this morning, Madam Chair noted Mr. Jim Wyatt, who again has been a stalwart, a supporter, advocate for not just this work, but for Black businesses across the state, having served as a local elected official in Victoria, leading the Texas Association of Black City Council Members, the Texas Municipal League. He is well versed in how the sausage is made in the legislative arena. Again, has led our organization as is responsible for my being in the role that I serve now. So we want to say thank you to Mr. Wyatt for insisting that we have a strong, solid foundation in our legislative agenda, and has shepherded this process, as Madam Chair says, for at least the last 6 months, ensuring that we arrive at this point the day before the 87th legislature convenes tomorrow. And so without further ado, welcome Mr. Jim Wyatt. The show is yours, sir.
All right, thanks for the kind words. I'll pay you a little later.
Yes, sir.
But good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I get excited this time of year. This is my Super Bowl. I just get energized because we have an opportunity to impact our communities and our businesses, and specifically as we go forward. Happy New Year to everyone that I have not interacted with previously this year. I'm excited to see your faces. And let's just a personal note before I get started. I see my friend Dee Jennings on the call. Back in 1988, I'm walking across in Fort Worth, Texas, in the airport. I tell this story all the time. I was a newly elected local official, and my son was attending TCU, so we were in the airport, and I see all these Black gentlemen in a room there, all attired in their Sunday go-to meetings, and they discussing. So what I say, what the heck are you guys doing? And so Dee and Reginald Gates and several others pulled me to the side and told me what was happening. And so 6 months later, I had Dee and gentleman from Acres Home, Melanson, in Victoria. We had formed a chamber in Victoria. Dee, I'm indebted to you. I'm indebted to John Self for assisting me. And even though I'm chronological, a couple of years older than Dee, around the state capitol, he has me beat by a long term. So Dee, thanks for all of you done for the state chamber. Your chairmanship certainly doesn't go unnoticed. So with that, what I would like to do is just walk through the upcoming session, and then I would like to summarily review our agenda. And our agenda will be based on several emails that we received from the general public, our Black businesses, and also the 1,177 pre-filed bills that was pre-filed by the House, and the 277 bills that were pre-filed by the Senate. So we will look at that when we get to the point of our booklet. And I don't want to forget this. I provided the content, but our president, as always, with his paper background and his development, developed the booklet and the aesthetics for it. And then I want to make sure we give him the accolades and say appreciative, because it's not all about me, it's about our team going forward. So that's what I want to say that. First of all, I would like to say that it's going to be an interesting 87th session. We'll start this noon tomorrow. For those that would like to peer in, I know Tony Rose has a link that you can link onto to be part of the opening session if you would like. I will, Charles and I, between the two of us, will get that information out to everyone, so that if you want to take a moment to participate, you can. So one of the things that I talk about very quickly is what the session will look like. We don't really know. I've seen from the Senate side that they only may meet in person on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That the Capitol is open again. I still have fillers out to see if we will be able to testify in person, or will that be a Zoom or some other type of testimony. I know that the House Budget Committee and the Appropriation will meet in person, but how they would do the other committee assignments is still up in air until the Speaker of the House is duly sworn in, and the Lieutenant Governor Patrick is there to share with us what the Senate side will look like. So with that said, there will be much time spent on education. There will be a lot of effort spent on training and workforce. Of course, there will be a lot of information and time spent on healthcare. And then we'll look at government performance. And then as one of these things that we talk about is broadband. So digital connectivity is going to be an outstanding item on the agenda. And of course, the budget is going to be another item that's going to be significant and a lot of time spent, because according to Hager, the comptroller, the deficit for our upcoming legislative session will be like $4.6 billion. And so we will have to cover that in some manner. So there will be a lot of time spent on those issues. And knowing that, probably going to be a lot of discussion on businesses that are involved in what we call the sin tax, type thing, to try to rainy day fund and all those things to take and cover that deficit. So those are things that initially that you will be looking at. And so it's going to be very, very important that we keep our ears to the ground. So let me just highlight a couple other things that will take up the legislators' time. I know that it's going to be important that we just not depend on the 19 members of the Legislative Black Caucus. We must be able to engage other across the aisle, on our side, on their side, to get this work done, because it's going to be probably the session will have an extended session after May. It probably go into September or so of this year, just for talking about it. But I know the Legislative Black Caucus will be fully engaged in the George Floyd. Am I saying that? George Floyd? Is that right? The person that got killed in Minnesota? Is that right? Correct?
George Floyd.
Floyd, I apologize. George Floyd, that didn't sound right. So, but George Floyd criminal package has been developed by the Legislative Black Caucus. There will be a lot. I mean, I saw, and I shared with the legislative team a spreadsheet that I developed. On that spreadsheet, I color coded it for the Legislative Black Caucus members and all the bills that they pre-file. On that spreadsheet, you can also just click on the House bill number, and it'll take you back out to the text. You can look at the bill in totality as is already presented today, and we'll go through that in a short moment. So redistricting, a very, very important item. It's going to take up a lot of time. I know that the NAACP legal department will be front and center in that. I know that there is the ACLU will be very instrumental in that. We had a little trouble with MALDEF the last time we had a redistricting, so that may come into play. So there's a lot. There's a lot of pre-filed bills dealing with voting. And so that's going to take up a lot of time. And again, the budget. So I share all those things with you just briefly so that you can have a backdrop uh, to to what may occur in this upcoming session. Um, One of the things that one of our team members, Dee, presented was digital connectivity, especially in times like these. In the book, I will show you we have a resolution to that, but I want to make sure that we understand we're not in this alone. There are others, we talk about there's probably over 1 million people that lack the broadband and internet connection. And so then there's more probably than 3 million people in Texas that do not even subscribe to it. And so in this time of virtual education and meetings and stuff, we're left out, our businesses, our children. So it's going to be important that we stay and support this legislation, advocate for this particular legislation so that we could be as don't fall behind. That's to say it at the least. So one of the things that they will be talking about with the digital connectivity is forming an agency to look at this, create a state broadband office. And then certainly I believe that the important part of it is to engage in some type of public-private partnership in order to make it a reality because government can't do it alone. And then I think in order for us to be successful, that we, along with the other legislators and other partners, need to create a plan going forward. So I think that's going to be sincerely important for us to do. And so one thing that we recognize is that importance. Um, Matt, I'm going to take and ask that I can share some documents at this time.
Will do. I'll make you a co-host so that I can make you a host. So whenever I host you, you can share the screen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, early on, I was sharing with you that I had developed a spreadsheet such that you're able to uh, uh, those that will want this, I can send it to. I know the team has it, but those that want this can look at it and look at any bills that we have. I was trying to find one very quickly that maybe one of our legislators had put together. Here's one by Nicole Collier. And so if you go to the left screen where you see HB 314, and we can click on that. Supposedly, I've worked on that. It can take you out, and then you can go to it and look at the text of the message or however you wanted to look at it. So wanted to make certain that you can know that you can do that pretty easy without trying to look up a bill that you know that's there. So this is what we will be distributing, if you will, to our legislators and to whomever desired. One thing I do know, and one thing Dee will tell you also, a printed legislative agenda is very important and powerful because people look at you differently than you just espousing something from the cuff. I tell the story all the time that one session we had had a printed legislative agenda booklet, and that we had taken and it looked something like this, if you can see it. And so we sit in the cafeteria, not even thinking about it. Two gentlemen approaches, saying, "Are you guys with the Texas Association African American Chambers?" And we said, "Yes." "How can we help you?" He said, "We're looking in your legislative booklet that you support XYZ. And I'm saying to myself, that's what we want to happen. We want the world to know what we stand for. And so it's very important we do that. In the booklet itself, uh, you will see all the logos of our supporting chambers and member chambers. We do have a preamble to that. In addition, we flip you see how good our president is. He has, well, we can just flip the page. We have a letter from our beautiful Madam Chair to everyone. The next page will indicate what our positions are, and we've shared this over and over again. Our general legislative position statements are: we would advocate for legislation. And what that means is we will enlist legislators to sponsor and endorse legislation on issues that are germane to TAC members' interests, right? So that's one category. Another category is support legislation. Upon request, we will canvass legislators or testify before legislator in the committee hearings on issues that are pertinent to TAC. And then we'll endorse legislation, express TAC support of legislation by telephoning our other members, through the internet, letter writing campaign, just to support and endorse legislation, i.e. It may come down to that with the Wi-Fi legislation that we spoke of earlier. And so then some of it we would just study and see what the impact of legislation on our constituency will be. And then last but not least, we could vigorously try to kill some bills that may not be in our best interest. And so those are the positions that we've been taking. Certainly, it's not carved in stone that we have to do this way every year, but it has been successful as how we presented it in the past years. So we have those positions that we have been successful in doing. And Matt, I don't know if anyone wants to stop and ask any questions at any time. They can raise their hands and we can stop in the session or put comments in there to you. Okay.
Thank you, Jim. We'll have, if people have questions, I'm monitoring the chat feature, so you can keep going. I don't see any questions right now.
Okay.
Audience, if you all have any questions, please write your questions in the chat box and we'll address them. Thank you.
Okay, I will summarily try to get through this because I don't want to keep you on the phone all day. But one of the things that we will present to them in the form of the budget crisis, what we think are important tax advocates for a more balanced approach versus just cut mentality. That means that reducing state agencies things that may be applicable to HUB or to other things that may impact doing business with the state of Texas. Those budgets, state agency budgets that have already been requested to be cut, a lot of that's already been have been done. So we will look at that. Economic development, certainly we want to make sure that we still support development of Community Reinvestment Act. We call it CRA, especially in insurance because there's a lot of redlining and the pricing end up different. And he must the real estate end of it end up different. So one of the things we support is absent sales tax. We support funding of skill development for programs. We also, there was a study done back when Susan Combs was at the controller's office, and that was very, very important for our students to be job ready. I think some of that should need to be re-looked at as we move forward. And so one of the things that I did see was several pieces of legislation pre-file about environmental things that happen in our community, because there are a lot of environmental issues, as you well know, that's happening in our our jurisdiction. And then education, we want to take and make sure that as a business end, we support having more parents interactive, support the community and schools program because dropout rates impact our communities as well as our businesses. We want to be able to hire people that have been trained or educated to assist our businesses. And the better they're trained, the better we are. Want to make sure that we support recording of the legislative votes during debate on the legislation on the floor. And I didn't talk about that, but I'll go back to it in a minute. We want to support legislation by Texas workforce that hires outside contractors, pay for performance, etc. And then we want to take and maintain relief for small business around the franchise tax. Okay. And then the health-wise, we want to make sure we support and explore ways to reduce the cost of insurance. We want to make sure that we support legislation appropriations to expand educational pipeline for physicians, nurses, PAs, etc. From the point of getting our individuals into college and to look at those health areas where we have deficiencies around physicians, nurses, etc. And then, of course, the big thing is TxDOT. We never seem to get our arms around any parts of the TxDOT appropriation. So I want to do that. And so very quickly, I want to stop and see we had any questions in the chat room.
No
Hey, Jim,
questions.
go ahead, Matt, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Mr. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. No questions from the chat, but I do have a question, Jim, on how advocates in local chambers, how we should communicate with our legislatures. I know that you said that they're only meeting, the Senate and the representatives only meeting twice a day. We don't know how the committees will meet, whether it's virtual or not. What should advocates do? What are the sign-in processes for us to have our voice heard in Austin?
Well, good question, Matt. Under normal circumstances, I will tell you, make sure that you either write to the committees that's hearing the particular bill and or the sponsors of that particular legislation. But the same thing should happen if we're unable to attend a hearing on the legislation and interact with those sponsors and the committee members that are hearing it. And then the second part of that, during normal times, we just go down to the and testify in person. We will go down and sign up to testify, or we could leave a written document with the secretary of that particular committee. And so that's what I would suggest that we still do, because there's a lot of unknowns at this time. Because we don't know that we'll be able to testify in person. We may be able to testify on Zoom as soon as they swear in the new Speaker of the House. Then we will probably get some information. And then Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has kind of indicated what it will look like from the Senate side as they perceive it to be. It's not in concrete. I'm just privy to have a niece that's the general clerk on the floor for the Senate, and this is what she had shared with me.
Thank you very much, sir. Also, would you do me a favor? Would you make me the host again on the video so I can?
Now you would have to tell me how to do all that stuff.
If you hover under participants, if you go to my name, right click, and you can have me. You can select the make host option.
Okay, I right-clicked on Matt, but can I do more?
Yes, more.
Make host, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And so one of the things we didn't talk about, and I know that most of you know and understand, what the how legislation is made. So normally, just a quick snapshot and overview is that someone introduces the bill. The bill is given a number. It is then assigned to the committee that should be able to take a look at that, and if it's voted out of committee, then it goes to a calendars committee that it will be able to be debated in the House. Now, one thing I did learn years ago that the calendar committee chairperson is one of the most powerful points in the legislature. If they keep deferring whether or not that bill gets assigned to be heard, the bill, if it's not successful out of committee, it may go up for review, it may not. If the bill is successful out of committee, and the calendars committee assign the bill to be heard, then it goes to the floor for debate. Normally in the House, the bill is heard in 3 hearings: the first, second, and third hearing. Is not so much in the same for the Senate. The Senate normally, the same process is there for the Senate side. A bill is assigned a number, it goes to committee votes it out, and it goes to calendar. Calendar takes and sets the time for hearing and debate. And so one of the things that occurs in the Senate, normally have a first hearing and then the second and third hearing if there is a majority vote for it. And so that's the difference in the House. House will have a reading, all 3 hearings. The Senate will have a first and second. And if it passes first, second, then they'll go ahead and have the third reading right there. They'll read it again right there on the floor, and then they'll vote on it. Now, of course, you recognize there's a voice vote, and then there's a call vote. And so those are the ways that they operate in those domains.
I know that there's another question. Greg McElroy asked, what is the impact of sunset provisions on legislation this session?
Well, one of the things that happens is depend on when the Sunset Committee reports out, because it possibly could be the same period of time that the legislature is meeting. But what happens is, for instance, the TxDOT is having a sunset review, right? And so depending on what comes out of that review, whether they are still able to operate as normal. So it has a great impact on legislation and appropriations.
Chairman White, I would like to ask a question to you, if you would be so kind to answer. You know, now that we have our legislative agenda, we're going to send this out today in mass order to our contact database with over 5,000 people. We'll of course get it to all of our local chambers. But what are some things that Black businesses can do, or our local chambers can do to support tax effort? You know, do you recommend us reaching out to our local officials, making sure that they have a copy of this? What are just some of the things that we can be doing on the ground as advocates in our local markets?
Well, you know, there's several things, if I'm understanding the question correctly, Madam Chair. There's several things. Number one, we must stay attuned to what's going on. Most likely, each of us will not be there. You know, normally Charles and I are there, and if we have an issue that I'll usually support, or we have a piece of legislation that we want to have someone to advocate for. So what my thing is that the team on the ground has to provide our team members, and that team members mean those local chambers, with information saying that we need you to write letters to these individuals. We need you to call these individuals. We need you to be down at the Capitol if that becomes an issue where we can go into the Capitol. Because what happens is the more of us that are present, as we would always say, there's power in numbers, then we need to be there. And then we need a testimony that is synchronized to what we are trying to accomplish. I can't have Madam Chair going in and say one thing that's representing TAC because she's the chairman, and then the president goes in and says another, because we don't want to take and get disjointed, because that's the game they play. And so we need to make sure we do that. The other thing is that we will, moving forward, we will try to find out how many of our team players are able to come to the Capitol if that be a need to testify. Because in the past, we always had a ready team. And sometimes that readiness means that you don't only come for a short period of time. That readiness means you come and you may have to spend a day or two in Austin. And so all of those things are important that we share with our team that we may be calling on them for the 87th legislative session.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
I thought Charles and someone else was asking the question.
Yeah, Jim, I would like, just in the interest of time, I'd like to focus on the importance of a couple of specific issues. One, I will focus on hub legislation, and two, the critical part about redistricting. And just real quickly, everyone understands we've got 17 Black representatives in the House, 2 in the Senate. The rate of population growth in the state of Texas, it is projected that each legislative district, particularly in the House side, will add an additional 90,000 residents. You know that Black populations are concentrated in urban centers. They're going to do some extreme maneuvering, gerrymandering, to try to make sure that Black representation does not grow. And so, to Matt's question about how we advocate from the local markets to the state, please use us on business-related issues, the NAACP on issues of social and civic issues, and of course the Texas Legislative Black Caucus are boots on the ground as we address both of these issues. But redistricting is going to be key. It's a 10-year fight. We'll get the results from this 2020 census back, and we know that whatever is the projected map for future representation distribution is going to go to court. So start with hub real quick, Jim, and then kind of brush up on how we battle that redistricting fight.
Well, what I want to say that you have hit on several of the items that's important. The hub issue is certainly foremost. We have several approaches that we already have in the bucket. One of those, Matt, if I can get, is that showing, Matt? But let's talk about the census while Matt is trying to talk about the hub. In the redistricting, we know that normally on the normal process that after the census count, which is they cut off this year, this census round, so there's certainly going to be an undercount of people of color, okay? Secondly, that it is not a given that they will use the census that are taken for this last 10 years. They may take and capture and use the census from mid 5 years. So mid-10 years, which would be 5 years that they estimate the census to be. So there's a lot going on. I echo the importance with Charles, with the president. But my whole thing is that all of those things are important, and that we all play a role in them. But then we cannot spread ourselves to the point where we cannot take and demonstrate the viability of what we're doing as a business organization. With I'm certainly understanding the impact, but we certainly have to take and push our agenda to make certain that it moves forward. One of the things that I have here on my screen is that we have proposed legislation that has been sent to Wes. We'll have to find someone in the House to help support it. It may not end up looking like the bill that I have in here, and I think I sent it out to our legislative task team. It talks about best value standards versus the good faith effort, and so as that goes along, we're certainly looking at that to incentivize the general contractors to utilize more hubs. With that said, the basic the premises of that is that the awarding of contracts to general contractors is very, very minute in the scoring realm. There's a very small separation that one general contractor over another receive. So if we are able to find some way to incentivize the general contractors to pick up the hub business, is going to be a plus. We're still working on this. It's a work in progress. The rough draft has already been sent to Senator West. And again, we are looking at someone on the House to evaluate this. And it's an ongoing process. We're still tweaking it. The second part of this is that I've been having long discussions with our former state hub coordinator, Paul Gibson. And one of the things that we've been debating, and he has strongly suggests, is that we create a portal for contracting, period, and especially subcontractors, uh, and make a way for the good faith effort to really be monitored and audited. The premise that we have a good faith effort, uh, and we have best value, we have all those things that works against businesses that are hub businesses. It doesn't do us very well, and so we must look at a way to overcome those and present some solutions, and just not talk about, hey, hub is not working, hub is not working. It may not be hub when we finish, but at least we are addressing the issues. And so I want to thank Paul. I think I saw him on the line for looking at ways that we could better have better results from our hub participation at the state level.
I know typically we have a Black Business Day during our face-to-face time. Are we going to coordinate maybe one day where all of the Black chambers, either virtually or some way, will reach out to all the legislatures?
That is probably going to be up for discussion with the executive team, Matt. I know that we need to certainly continue that. I'm not sure of how that's going to come about.
Matt, let me jump in and help address that one also too. We've been very carefully evaluating if an in-person type of event will be appropriate. And I think at this point, from what we have heard about access to the Capitol, that is not going to be possible. I've even heard the point that there is rapid COVID testing that has to occur in order for individuals to be able to actually enter the Capitol. So then that leads us back to looking at a virtual presence, which is something that we are evaluating now. The other synergy point that we have is the Texas Legislative Black Caucus and their summit As Chairman Wyatt alluded to, we do now have them as an office mate with us for this legislative session. So we're very glad to help host them in our TAC office. So that gives us greater connectivity to them. And as they start to develop the plans for their conference, one idea that we have is being a greater part of the Texas Legislative Black Summit and being able to host a workshop and different things as part of the TOBC conference. So just know that by the end of the month, we plan to have that solidified as their team gets up and running. But we are glad that we have greater connectivity to them as TAC is hosting them in our office space.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, one last thing that I have. I don't know how long we're on for, but I also wanted to share that in the background, there's a piece of federal legislation that I'm excited about that we will be providing a little more information on. And I'm working with the Honorable Mayor of Prairie View, Brother Roland, and then also working with Charles and I working with some ranchers and farmers, and it has to do with the Black Farmers Bill of Rights that just came out over the next 10 years. Matt got me confused. I had everything up on my computer so I could show you guys, but it deals with roughly $500 billion over the next 10 years of enhancing Black farmers. It has a education component, research component, property purchase component that I want to present at a moment when it's appropriate to our executive committee. I think that TAC could take the lead for the state of Texas in this particular realm. So I want to make certain that we're able to do that. And we will, I think that we are able to get some mileage out of for TAC, not only for PR, but many of our members and probably the real estate members will be able to do that. Training from the educational component. PV is already set up for that. So it's a matter of tying all that in. We both, Charles and I both know ranchers and farmers across the state that could benefit from this program, and those that may want to be farmers and ranchers. Again, there's possibility that there's a grant for 160 acres of land, whereas the real estate agents are able to identify where this land is and so forth and so on. So we look forward to that as part of our legislative agenda and our legislative appetite to continue to impact Black businesses.
Part of the issue here is that we're going to have to broaden our base. Now, we can go in and talk to Senator West and Collier, and we've done that. Charles have done it. I know Jim has been doing it forever. The issue gets down to having more pressure on the legislature than just African-American pressure. Now, in some districts, including Fort Worth, we got the same project coming here on Loop 820 and I-20. The issue gets down to us influencing some of those white Anglo representatives that we help elect to office. Because if you're just gonna think the Black Caucus is gonna do it, it's just not gonna happen. So where there's leverage, where there's an opportunity to leverage, and it can start at your city council folk. You can get your city council person that you vote on to leverage the state rep that you may or may not vote on, but you got to let your city council person know you're mad as hell about not having an issue opportunity here and expand the opportunity for other folks to get in the game with us to say 7% for Black folks ain't enough, if that's the case, or whatever it is. But we get stuck in only just wanting to get on African-American folks. And when you look at the sheer numbers, we don't have them. So sometimes, and I know it may come up, we may have to go across the aisle. And I understand Republican Democrat stuff. The issue gets down to the color of freedom. And the color of freedom to me is green. So how do you get the green? So sometimes you may have to hold your nose and go and talk to somebody that will vote or put your preposition up front and say, hey, we need to make sure that the African-American community gets a better piece or whatever. We got the contractors. Jim and I and Charles, I'm so tired of hearing what we don't have. We have the contractors. The issue, we don't have the opportunity. And the biggest fight that we're going to continue to have is economic equity. That's where the fight is. That's what it's all about. And that's my 3 cents worth. But I do get frustrated because I hear this argument and then we won't do the work of going beyond our database or going beyond our voter base. We got to do something different. And we may have to, and we can discuss this at another day. Charles and I have been talking about it, Jim and others. We may have to look at not only legislatively, but administratively. How can we enforce something or get some favor administratively to get some things done? Because when it gets in the legislative arena down in Austin, you got 19 Blacks, so many Hispanics, and 100 rural white folks. Enough said.
Look, in the interest of time, thanks so much, D. Jennings. Appreciate that. That's Fort Worth Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce, former chair of our organization. Thank you all for your attendance this morning. Any final comments, Mr. Wyatt, before we go, Madam Chair? Follow Mr. Wyatt, and then Matt, take us home. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for having this opportunity. Certainly, it's a book full of things that we need to do, we've been doing. I think for individuals that share their frustration and how our government has been participating with our communities. Thank you, Marvin, for that. I look forward to hearing from you. It's not an overreach. We fight these things all the time. It has been so important. As I say, the legislative session is like making sausage. And if you ever seen making sausage, it is a thing that you wouldn't want to eat after you have been participating. But at the end of the day, it's important because it impacts our community, it impacts our well-being, our children, et cetera, in our community. So, Mr. President, Madam Chair, I look forward to moving forward with our agenda. And thank you all so much for attending and participating.
Thank you, Past Chair Wyatt. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you also to Mr. President. I want to just recognize the 2021 TAC Legislative Task Force that includes Past Chair D. Jennings out of Fort Worth. So thank you so much, sir. It includes Dr. Brian Rowland, who's a part of our board, representing the city of Prairie View. He recently was elected as the mayor, but he's a board member and part of this committee. Ms. Carol Guess, chairwoman of the Greater Houston Black Chamber. Of course, Jim Wyatt, myself, and our president. So I just want to recognize the committee that has been meeting to get us to this point. Lastly, I want to say thank you to everyone for attending. We also have the ability through our treasurer and board member Matt Houston that these will be appearing on Facebook and YouTube and different places. So hopefully everyone smiled, because we are going to the internet and the social media world. So very excited about this, and please plan to join us again on January 25th. Thank you, everybody.